The late afternoon light poured over Marlow Heights like molten gold, catching on the curve of a car parked across the street. At first I didn't notice anything unusual, just another glossy classic someone had driven out for a weekend spin. Then my brain registered the shape of the hood, the exact green metallic paint I'd spent months mixing to match an old Polaroid, the small dent on the rear fender that my dad had insisted gave it character. My throat closed. It was my father's 1970 Dodge Challenger. The one stolen from my apartment garage 13 months ago. The one the police told me was probably stripped down in pieces by now. But here it was. Whole. Shining. Like it had never disappeared. I took a step forward, heart hammering, and then the driver's door swung open. And there she was. Reese Halden. My best friend since college. My confidant through breakups, late-night fears, and every bad decision we'd ever made together. She laughed at something someone inside the bar had said, tucking her hair behind her ear the same way she had since we were 19. The world tilted under me. My best friend was standing next to the car I'd mourned like a family member. And she had the keys. A year earlier, Portland was all rain-slicked streets and the smell of wet cedar drifting in from Forest Park. My life felt stable, almost boring, which at 29 I thought was a good thing. I had my job at a small but ambitious architecture firm, a loft apartment with too many plants, and the kind of weekends that revolved around coffee, old vinyl records, and the open road. The road always meant one thing: the Challenger. It wasn't just a car. It was my father's legacy, the last big project we worked on together before cancer took him. I could still see him in our cramped garage, bent over the hood in a faded mariner's cap, grease smudging his cheek as he muttered about carburetors like they were living things. Every scratch on the paint, every hum of the engine carried his voice. When he left it to me in his will, I promised I'd keep it running, keep it ours. And I did. Every Saturday, rain or shine, I'd take it out along the Columbia River Highway, the engine's rumble mixing with the rush of the water below. Then came the morning it was gone. I walked into the apartment garage, travel mug in hand, already late for a site meeting. The space where the Challenger sat was empty, just an oil stain and a lonely rag I'd left by the tire the night before. For a few seconds my brain refused to compute. I just stood there, coffee cooling in my hands, waiting for it to somehow reappear. The building's security guard, a man named Larry who always smelled like menthols, told me the camera for my section had been out for maintenance for 2 weeks. The police were sympathetic but blunt. A car like that, most likely parted out in a chop shop within 48 hours, the officer said, scribbling notes without looking up. I remember calling Reese right after my mom. She showed up with donuts, wrapping me in a hug that smelled like her vanilla shampoo. "It's just a car," she said softly. I didn't tell her that. To me, losing it felt like losing Dad all over again. Back in Marlow Heights, I stayed hidden behind the SUV, my fingers tight around my phone. Reese leaned casually against the Challenger, scrolling through her own screen while the sunset bounced off that green paint like it was mocking me. I told myself there had to be an explanation. Maybe she bought one just like mine. Maybe it was a bizarre coincidence. Same dent, same cracked leather on the driver's seat, same plate number burned into my brain. Except there are no coincidences like that. Not with something this personal. The Reese I knew couldn't, steal from me. This was the woman who'd stayed up with me until 3 a.m. when my dad's hospice nurse called to say it was time. Who'd pulled me off the couch after the funeral and shoved me outside into the sunlight, saying, "He wouldn't want you to rust." She was family. And family doesn't gut you in the dark. But as she unlocked the Challenger and slid into the driver's seat, the sound of that engine, my father's engine, roared through the street and something inside me shifted. If she had done this, if she had really taken the one thing I couldn't replace, then I needed the truth. And the truth would need proof. I slipped away before she could see me, my heart pounding in sync with the Challenger's growl as she pulled into traffic, completely unaware that her passenger was now the weight of a year-old betrayal. The next evening I parked 2 blocks from Reese's apartment, a converted duplex with a wraparound porch she'd once sworn was perfect for summer reading. From my spot under a street lamp, I could see the Challenger gleaming in the driveway like a prize on display. No car cover, no attempt to hide it. Bold. Or maybe careless. I stayed in the shadows, jotting details into my phone. Plate number, VIN etched into the corner of the windshield, even the tiny chip in the rear taillight from the time I'd misjudged the garage wall. At one point the porch light flicked on. Reese stepped outside, barefoot, talking on her phone. She laughed, the same easy laugh I'd heard 100 times, and dangled a set of keys from her fingers. My keys. The leather fob Dad had tooled by hand, initials pressed deep into the hide. Any hope I had for an innocent explanation cracked right then. I started looking deeper. Property tax records for her address. Social media posts I'd never noticed before, grainy photos of the Challenger tagged at coastal diners and desert gas stations, timestamps matching the weeks she'd claimed she was visiting family. Every discovery made my chest tighter, my memories heavier. It wasn't just that she'd stolen my car. She'd been living a whole other life inside it, like stepping into the Challenger meant stepping into my skin. And if she'd lied about this, what else had she lied about? 2 weeks into my quiet surveillance, the break came from a place I didn't expect. My old mechanic, Gabe. I'd taken the Challenger to his shop for years, and he'd been one of the first to commiserate when I told him it had been stolen. I hadn't spoken to him in months, but one slow Tuesday afternoon, I walked in with a box of pastries like I used to. The second he saw me, his eyebrows shot up. "Didn't think I'd see you until the next tune-up," he said. "Everything running okay?" I forced a smile. "You've seen my car?" Gabe leaned on the counter, confusion deepening. "Saw you 2 weeks ago. Dropped it off for an oil change and new belts. You even said you were heading down to Big Sur after." The blood in my veins turned cold. "Gabe," I said carefully, "what exactly did I look like?" He frowned, thinking. "Same green jacket you always wore, baseball cap, that leather key fob your old man made. Only thing different was the hair, shorter, darker." "Reese." Gabe didn't need more prompting. He went into the back and came out with the old work order. Reese had signed my name. Sloppy but close enough. And taped to the corner of the invoice like a trophy was a Polaroid Gabe had taken for his customer wall. Reese leaning against the Challenger, one boot propped on the bumper, grinning like she owned the world. That was my proof. And it made the truth unbearable. Later, sitting in my car outside my apartment, I turned the photo over in my hands. On the back, in Gabe's handwriting, "Heading to Big Sur. Safe travels, Dana." I didn't need to guess the motive anymore. Reese hadn't stolen the Challenger for money. She'd stolen it to have the life she thought I had. The freedom, the road trips, the legacy. And I was going to take it back. Taking it back wasn't going to be as simple as showing up and demanding the keys. Reese had already proven she was willing to lie to my face for over a year. If I confronted her too soon, she'd spin another story or disappear with the Challenger before I could stop her. I needed leverage. The first step was the police report. I dug out the original case file, the one I'd practically memorized in those first hopeless months after the theft. Back then it had been nothing but a dead end. Now, armed with Gabe's work order, the Polaroid, and a timeline that put Reese behind the wheel in multiple states, I had something the detectives couldn't shrug off. Detective Rains, the one who'd handled my case before, was more interested this time. He flipped through the evidence slowly, pausing on the Polaroid. "This is recent?" "2 weeks ago," I said. His mouth tightened. "All right. We can work with this." But even as he outlined next steps, interviews, subpoenas for her travel records, I knew I wanted more than just a legal win. I wanted Reese to see me reclaim what was mine, to know she hadn't just been caught, she'd been outplayed. So I started tracking her movements. The coastal diner she liked in Half Moon Bay. The coffee shop on 3rd where she always parked the Challenger just close enough for passers-by to admire it. I learned her habits the way I'd once learned her coffee order. And then I found my opening. The Marlow Heights Classic Car Show, 2 Saturdays away. Public. Crowded. With registration records that required the owner's full name and vehicle history. She was planning to enter the Challenger under my name again. Good. Because I'd be there too, and this time I wouldn't be hiding in the shadows. The morning of the car show was a postcard. Cloudless sky, the air smelling faintly of salt from the nearby marina. Rows of polished classics gleamed under the sun, chrome and candy-colored paint turning the parking lot into a living museum. I spotted the Challenger instantly. Front row, angled just right to catch the light. Hood propped open so strangers could admire the engine my father and I had rebuilt bolt by bolt. And there was Reese, leaning casually against the fender, sunglasses on, chatting with a man in a Corvette jacket. She was in her element, confident, admired, completely unaware the ground beneath her was about to collapse. I waited until she was alone. Then I walked up, my shadow stretching across the Challenger's hood. "Nice ride," I said. She turned, smiling automatically, and froze when she saw me. Dana, she said, voice catching. I didn't know you'd be here. Clearly, I replied. I glanced at the car. Looks good for something that's been missing for 13 months. Her mouth opened but nothing came out. I reached into my bag, pulled out the Polaroid from Gabe's shop and placed it on the hood between us. Signed my name, took my car, lived my life. You want to tell me why? The sunglasses came off slowly. It wasn't like that, she started, her voice low. After your dad died, you shut down. You barely drove it. I thought you didn't care anymore. That wasn't your decision to make. My voice was steady but my hands clenched at my sides. You could have asked. Instead you stole it, lied about it, and paraded it around like a trophy. Around us, the hum of conversation had softened. A few heads turned. Reese's cheeks flushed, but she didn't deny it. This car was the only thing that made me feel free, she said. I thought maybe, if I had it, I could feel what you felt. Like it could fix everything. I shook my head. It can't fix you, Reese. And it's not yours to take. Before she could answer, Detective Raines stepped forward from the crowd, plain clothes, badge in hand. Reese Halden? We need to talk about a stolen vehicle. Her eyes flicked between us, panic blooming. As Raines read her rights, I stepped back, letting the Challenger's polished surface reflect her face instead of mine. 2 weeks later, the Challenger was back where it belonged, in my building's garage, under a fresh cover that smelled faintly of new vinyl. The first time I slid behind the wheel again, I just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, feeling the weight of the leather, the familiar give of the seat. It wasn't the same. The car was mine, but the memories felt bruised. Every mile Reese had put on it without me left a mark I couldn't see but could feel, deep in my chest. Legally it was clean now. Reese had agreed to a plea deal: probation, community service, restitution for the use of the vehicle. The detective told me she'd avoided jail by a hair. I didn't ask for details. People kept asking if I was going to forgive her. I didn't have an answer for that. Forgiveness wasn't a switch you flipped. It was a road you either chose to walk or didn't. Right now I wasn't walking it. One Saturday I drove the Challenger along the Columbia River Highway again. The air was crisp, the road quiet. For the first few miles, I kept expecting Reese to appear in the passenger seat, grinning like she had in the early days. But as the sun broke through the clouds, I realized this wasn't her road anymore. It was mine again. I pressed the accelerator, the engine's growl filling the silence. Dad used to say a well-built car will always take you where you need to go. You just have to steer. So I did. Straight ahead, no looking back.